Erika Jordan, certified love coach, author, media expert, and I want to welcome you to Loveology University's panel of Sexperts. I'll be your moderator, so let me introduce you to our esteemed panel. Dr. Ava Cadell is the founder of Loveology University and my mentor. Tamara Bell was one of the first LU graduates in 2008. Now she's the student ambassador and mentor. Dr. Hernando Chaves is an MFT and professor at Pepperdine University. Viloshni Moodley is an LU grad, author, and intimacy coach. Last but definitely not least is Dr. Diana Wiley, a certified sex therapist and licensed MFT for more than 30 years. She's the author of Love in the Time of Corona and graciously bestowed her book to Loveology University students and alumni. So thank you very much. But that's not all. I'll be giving away my 6-week course, The Art of Pickup, which helps you acquire the skills to approach women with confidence and get them to want you. And that's not all. We have more prizes. I just don't know what they all are. Can someone tell me what the prizes are?
Sure. Well, I'm going to give away my healing course, the entire healing course, because I think the world needs healing more than ever.
I'm giving away a mentor, 30-minute mentor to a special person.
Ooh, so many free prizes. I know we have a lot of good stuff, and we're going to be taking some questions today. We can ask them via live chat, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible. So our panel of Sexperts discussion is on COVID, love, relationships, and sex. So let's begin with some sex positivity, shall we? Did you know that sex toy sales are booming with social distancing from COVID? I think it's perhaps because you are your own safest partner. Dr. Ava, why do you think sex toys have accelerated?
Well, I do agree with you, Erika. I think that having sex with yourself is definitely the safest and sometimes even more satisfying. But seriously, because of COVID, yes, indeed, sex toys have been booming. And I think it's because so many people are lonely. Even some couples who are in sexless relationships, they're lonely, they're horny. They want to escape from the stress, and sex toys can release the stress. They can flood your brain with those pleasure, endorphins, and it truly is pure natural escapism, especially when you orgasm. So that's what I think. I think that's one of the reasons that sex toys are booming right now.
Tamara, apart from being our ambassador of students and mentor, you're also an expert on sex toys. So what's your theory on the sex toy market booming since COVID?
Well, a lot of people are staying at home, and now they have the ability to go and look at all the amazing products that are being made by our manufacturers. So I think that there was a time where they couldn't really get out and do that, and now that they are, they're home. So now they can go out and just pick up all the products that's available.
So true. Dr. Hernando, as a university professor and MFT who works with LGBTQ and fetish communities, what's your philosophy of how COVID has impacted the sex toy market?
COVID has impacted the sex toy market in a number of different ways that both Dr. Ava and Tamara have shared. I want to touch upon the impact on couples, because as Dr. Ava mentioned, it's a great way for individuals and people to experience solo sex and pleasure, but it's also been a way for couples and people who are either quarantining or isolating under the same roof to also explore novelty. And when we look at research, let's say, for example, Justin Lehmiller's book, Tell Me What You Want, which is on sexual fantasies, we find that the top 3 fantasies are threesomes, power and control fantasies, and novelty. And when you dissect and deconstruct what novelty is, it's really about this desire to want to find sexual variety, because we do know from research that in long-term relationships, sometimes the passion does diminish for a lot of couples, and it's going to take effort and for us to create more opportunities for it to experience pleasure and passion, and novelty is one of those ways. I think sex toys offer us a unique opportunity to step outside the box, to open the door to maybe exploring some fantasies, maybe even exploring some different parts of the body. For example, we have sex toys that can stimulate the nipples, the clitoris, the G-spot, the anus, the prostate, vibration and different sort of forms of sensation. So for people, I think it could be a really wonderful way to take this time and this opportunity to explore something that a lot of us don't give a lot of space to, which is pleasure and our erogenous zones.
Yeah, and the mind is a safe place. So sometimes that variety we seek just happens to be right here. Viloshni, you live in South Africa, and I was surprised to learn that it's only in the last decade that the sale of sex toys became legal. What's your opinion on the vast increase in sales since COVID?
So for the better part of our lockdown in South Africa, we were not allowed to access any alcohol or tobacco. So my take on it was that South Africans then found sex toys, and thus the boom. But on a serious note, I think people are becoming more attuned with themselves sexually. So the highest purchases have been by single females and couples, and single females of all races, whereas previously it was just white women in South Africa that were the target market for sex toys. So that was quite an interesting find. It's also married couples starting to explore and add a bit more variety in the bedroom.
Speaking of, let's move straight into Dr. Diana's book, as I'm sure everyone watching would like to know, what are the 3 things a couple should focus on to improve their relationship during the pandemic?
Well, let me hold up the book, Love in the Time of Corona, and advice from a sex therapist for couples in quarantine. And the 3 things that I would like to talk about are to listen, really listen to your partner, and then speak your own truth too. You know, I think that some of the best advice that a sex therapist or any therapist can give when dealing with couples is to really listen. You know, so often we're thinking about what we're going to say next and we're not really plugged in and listening. So that's really, really important. And listen with an open heart. I have some exercises in my book having to do with the listening stick and phrase and giving your partner feedback about what you think you heard. Because so often the message sent is not the message received. It goes like that. The next point is, so listen is the first point. The next point is to touch. Really touch each other in loving and healing ways. Loving and healing ways. And I have lots of suggestions for that in my book. And also respect boundaries. That's a whole discussion in itself, isn't it? And then thirdly, express gratitude. You know, so many couples' relationships die from emotional undernourishment. We start taking each other for granted. And that's really a shame. Expressing gratitude is thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for loving me. I do an exercise with my couples, and it is in the book too, called Sweet Nothings. And you each take a turn, about 1 minute each, where you say positive, loving things. I love and appreciate so much that you bring me coffee in the morning. It helps me wake up. And then go on like that. In some of these, it's in the book, but I've done it in my sessions, as I said. And I've had men actually cry in that exercise when they hear all these positive, loving things from their partners. And they just haven't been accustomed. We need to express gratitude. So those are the 3 main things.
And when you feel appreciated, you want to do more things that are worthy of being appreciated.
Exactly right.
I think those tips will help a lot of couples, and you can find more in Dr. Diana's book, Love in the Time of Corona. Let's see that one more time.
Oh, sure.
There it is. All right, let's take some questions, shall we? Okay, our first question from participants is for Dr. Ava. What advice do you have for someone who wants to be in a relationship, but they're living alone and too afraid to date during the pandemic?
Well, first, don't beat yourself up, for being alone and not being in a relationship. And don't date until you feel ready, until you are comfortable. So until then, date yourself and treat yourself as if you are madly in love with you. Okay, I know that sounds easier than it really is, but you can begin by really thinking about what makes you lovable, what makes you unique and lovable. So let me ask a couple of the panelists here, Erika. What makes you lovable that most people may not even know about just looking at you or, just seeing you on YouTube?
I have a passion for pandas. So I started a nonprofit. It's at erikajordan.org. I call it Save the Fluffies. So you can head over there just if you want to see cute pictures of pandas, just want to do my part to ensure they stick around.
That. Oh, that does make you even more lovable. And Tamara, we've known each other over a decade, so you have many lovable qualities, but what's one that perhaps we don't know?
Well, I coach people, but I also teach children reading. So I teach them how to read.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, how old are the children?
Kindergartners.
Oh, that's beautiful. Just don't let them read any of the books from Loveology
No.
University.
Not at all.
And Hernando, same question. I've known you for many, many years, and I know that you're lovable, but tell everybody watching what's one unique, lovable fact.
I think one thing that you don't always see, because we're talking about therapy and challenges and emotions and mental health and sexuality, is that I'm really passionate about certain things, especially around family or friends or sports. And the things that I really lean into and give my heart to, you can really see that. So it's just something that I'm happy within myself, that I'm not afraid to just love hard.
I love hard. That's good. That's better than love soft. And you are not sure, you're so close to your family, and I love that. And Dr. Diana, I've also known you forever. So what makes you unique and lovable?
I think my positivity.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist. I always have been. My mother tells me that starting at 2 years old, even earlier, I was dancing around, singing songs, and just loving life. And I was really fortunate because I had secure attachment as a child. I had a mother and a father, both who really loved and responded to me and were available. So I was so lucky because I got a really good beginning. Yes.
Yeah.
So
You are
I
so
think that it
lovable.
makes
That's
me
why you're
positive.
here. And your generosity with your book makes you extremely lovable. Thank you. And then Viloshni, we just met a few months ago, and you're beautiful, but what makes you even more lovable?
I think my empathy and also my ability to really listen to people, and my passion just to empower and try to make a difference in people's lives.
Perfect. So basically my long answer to Erika's question is to date yourself, fall in love with yourself. Once you know what makes you lovable, make sure that you reward yourself. Give yourself rewards that make you happy, healthy, give you peace of mind, and just literally treat yourself as if you are madly in love with you.
I agree. We spend so much time beating ourselves up, but we rarely reward ourselves for all the good things we do.
Exactly.
Dr. Hernando, someone has asked for a man's perspective. How have you seen COVID impact dating and relationships for all genders and orientations?
So part of my work is focusing on the LGBTQ queer communities, but also the kink, fetish, non-monogamy, and sexual minority communities as well. And what I find what I've been finding with the clients that I've been working with, and also with what I'm reading, is that the isolation and the loneliness is especially challenging for these communities because of how much they lean upon community support, community building, and also their chosen families. And what I mean by chosen family is that many times when we're sexual minority individuals, we may have some challenges or struggles with certain aspects of being out, whether it's with our family or with our friends or with our coworkers. So the people that we choose to sort of align with our transparency and our vulnerability of opening up around our gender, our queerness, our orientation, our sexual minority sort of status, those are the people that we truly oftentimes feel more at ease, more comfortable with, and maybe a lot more sort of closer and intimate with. Now, with COVID sort of taking that away with social distancing and isolation, we find that there's a vast sort of need for this community building. And you find that in many of these communities, they're doing their best to try to fill those voids. For example, in the kink community and in the non-monogamy community, you see a lot more people creating COVID pods, which are essentially having agreements with other individuals whom they agree upon sort of a certain amount of protection and boundaries around their both COVID testing and also their protection, so that they can have some interaction, some ability to see each other. Kind of similar to what we used to call fluid bonding when it came to having sex and also being tested and knowing your status. And these are some of the ways that I find that people are trying to overcome some of these difficulties. But if you really think about it from a non-monogamous perspective or a kink perspective, when your life has been revolved around play parties or attending dungeons, or in the gay or queer community where the social interactions of going out and being social in the community is such a big part, we're going to have to get creative. We're going to have to get very imaginative with how we can still keep those bonds alive. So it's been a difficult time for a lot of these communities.
And being forced to create that creativity will come in handy for years to come. So there's a rainbow there. Viloshni, what's your advice on how to meet someone new during a pandemic?
So I think that firstly, the individual needs to ensure that emotionally, spiritually, that they, and mentally, that they're ready to do this, to meet someone new. And the pandemic or lockdown should not be a deterrent to this. People can do it via social media. There's several platforms, and I think it's just about you as an individual knowing exactly what profile of person you're looking for. And on social media, I believe if you do engage and network authentically, there is an opportunity for you to meet someone. There's also dating apps that can be utilized. And, if you are taking the risk of going out and attending events, you would obviously take all the necessary precautions that you would need to. And in any of these settings, there's definitely an opportunity for you to meet someone.
So true. Tamara, here's a question directed for you. How can you help mentor a new student if they're not in a relationship?
So we have a lot of students who are in various relationships, or they're either married, widowed like Dr. Ava and myself, or they are single. I always tell them it's really not about you. So if you're not in a relationship, it's okay, because you're not really talking about your relationship or what you do, but you're more helping them to bring out what they're looking for. So it's really just about probing, asking questions, and then directing them. And all the curriculum that we have in our program gives them all the tools that they need to help a client or themselves without having to worry about, oh, I'm not in a relationship, so I'm not really sure what to do. So they can just use the material that's provided that they learned, and then they can go out and either help themselves or they can help their clients.
Sure. I mean, a fitness trainer doesn't have to be a bodybuilder in order to train someone to win a body competition. It's kind of the same thing. I think it's a good time to work from home and start a new career as a love coach. Dr. Diana, here's a question for you. Can having more sex help a couple's relationship survive the pandemic? And if so, how?
Well, sure. Having more sex can be so good in so many ways. But first, you might want to see it as a time where you have a heartfelt talk. You with an open mind, and here we're back to listening again, and really listen. And I think putting aside your differences for a time would really also be helpful to have more sex. That plays into having a heartfelt. I mean, that plays into having if you have an impasse with each other. If you want to have more sex, it's also helpful to recall the good times. You know, bring out some albums with old photos, talk about old trips, maybe dance together to some of your favorite music. And tell each other, this is especially useful for couples who've been together a while. Tell each other the story about why you fell in love in the first place. Why did you fall in love and how was that? And something to remember is if you fell in love years ago, and now we're talking obviously about long-term couples, if you fell in love, you can do it again. You may have to put aside some differences for a time, but you want to have sex again. And I've helped many couples do this. Sometimes couples that want to really have more sex again do need to get some therapy and to get some help or some coaching. So those things can help. But having more sex is really, really good for feeling good and feeling healthy and feeling connected.
I think it puts you in a better state of mind for the upcoming conversations as well.
Yes, that's right. But sometimes you have to have the talk before you have the sex.
Yes.
And then it becomes emotional foreplay. And we really need more emotional foreplay, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So many relationships die from emotional undernourishment, really. We're just
I couldn't
dying.
agree.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Hernando, do you agree with that? And what are some ways that we can work towards creating more opportunities for sexual health and pleasure during COVID?
You mentioned the word opportunity, and I think that's important for people to start thinking about in terms of reframing how we're seeing this pandemic. That I first want to acknowledge that this pandemic is difficult and hard for a lot of people, that there are some folks who are really struggling to meet some basic needs. And if you're worried about food insecurity or a roof over your head or economic challenges or unemployment difficulties, I mean, this can make these stressors can be so challenging and they can consume a lot of our focus. And it's not easy for us to focus and think about things like meditation or having orgasms or purchasing sex toys. So there's a lot that we have to consider for the people that we're working with. So I encourage folks to honor maybe the space of talking about those basic needs that a lot of folks are having difficulty meeting. And then also reframe that maybe some of the things that we can control, such as our own masturbation, our own pleasure, might be something that we can use to help support our struggle as we're moving through trying to overcome some of these difficulties and challenges. I think we can also create an opportunity to reframe COVID as something that can offer us space to explore, whether it's to listen to more podcasts, read more books, explore our own sexual pleasure. You know, I think there's a lot more opportunity for sexual health growth because many of us are afforded some more time in our days at this point during the pandemic. And I really encourage people to start stepping outside the box, to explore things that maybe they haven't explored, such as trying some novelty or kink or exploring a new sort of area of the body that might feel pleasure. And maybe even start sharing things with our partners and exploring things like transparency and vulnerability and the development of more emotional intimacy, which sometimes, folks may not put a lot of emphasis on. And if you think about, some of the different sexual response and sexual desire theories, like, for example, Rosemary Basson's out of Canada, where her circular theory of sexual response and sexual desire is predicated on having strong emotional intimacy as one of the ways to create more of a sexual desire within females and people in general, that maybe this is an opportunity again for us to lean into some of the areas that we may not feel as strong, especially for some of the men, like vulnerability or emotional intimacy, or creating more of a deeper sense of knowing when it comes to emotional intelligence.
That growth requires discomfort. And if you're dead set on always staying comfortable, you're really denying yourself that opportunity for growth. Viloshni, can you share some creative ways to keep the romance alive while at home and away from each other?
Definitely. It's my favorite. So it's definitely, I mean, I think keeping the creative juices flowing, and some of the ways that you can do it, and it would be applicable for both, whether you're in the same home or you're virtual. So watching a movie together where you could, if you in the same home, you hold hands, cuddle up together, watch the movie. If you happen to be virtual, start the video call, start the movie together, and just try to pay some attention to your partner's maybe facial expressions, and maybe mention it to your partner, and they would take really so much of pleasure and joy in that you actually noticed, maybe a twitch or something small. The next thing would be, planning a dinner, a dinner date. If you're in the same home, you could plan to do it out under the stars. You could do it in the bedroom as a picnic on the floor. Do it at the table if you wish. If your partner is virtual, again, you could probably do the prep of dinner together via a video call. And then eat the meal together as well. And also, it just depends on how much of effort you want to put in, set the scene as if the person is in the same room with you. And and then game night is also another idea. Truth or dare, never have I ever. Just make up the questions and the rules as you go along. Dish out some punishment and probably some reward as well, and just keep the fun going in that way. And lastly, I think mutual pleasure night or day, just depending on whether you have kids or not. You could do it if you're in the same house. That's quite easy. If you're virtual, just put some planning into it. Probably you need some props like a chair, tripod, some sex toys, and any other props that you could think of, and just make it enjoyable for both you and your partner, because we have different needs. So
I love that. I'm also a big fan of acquiring a new skill together, like taking a virtual class and just getting better at something. I think that's really good for relationships.
Yeah.
Dr. Ava, one of your students wants to know, what are some unique romantic gifts that you can recommend for Valentine's Day during COVID?
Well, I think that the card is as important, if not more important, than the gift. Certainly for women anyway. I'm generalizing here. But I think giving a card and customizing it with photos of the two of you, and maybe even writing a poem if you can, will definitely make that memorable. Now, for a sexy gift, again, I think you need to be somewhat creative, and it's not going to cost you anything. That's the good news. So I recommend creating like a Valentine's menu, but with romantic and sexual activities. So for your appetizer, you could have all kinds of foreplay, from kissing to role playing to erotic talk. And then for your main course, you can have your sex toys, you can have some Kama Sutra positions, maybe some BDSM play. And then for your dessert, how about a sensual massage? But if you're too exhausted, you can just cuddle. So that would be, well, that is going to be my Valentine's gift. And then I really liked what Viloshni said about having a picnic. So after you've had your Valentine's menu, how about a real menu to satisfy your palate. But love foods, feed each other some love foods, have the picnic in your bed. And what are love foods? Well, all seafood is an aphrodisiac because it releases zinc and it also releases testosterone. So any kind of seafood, or if you're not into that, how about some juicy fruits? You can feed each other or you can eat them off each other's body. So there's all kinds of really fun, creative ways that you can make Valentine's Day romantic and unforgettable, and it's not going to cost you hardly anything.
Picnics are really underrated. I think they're
Tell me
fabulous.
about it. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you can go to the beach and have a picnic too. You just can't lick the fruit off each other.
Tamara, I know you arranged for a sex toy manufacturer, Doc Johnson, to give away a basket of adult toys to one lucky winner watching. Can you tell us about them and describe some of the products in the basket?
Sure. So Doc Johnson has been around for a little over 40 years. They started in 1976 in North Hollywood. They are one of our founding companies of the adult product sector. And so they are a $15 billion company. They have about a 250,000 square foot facility, and they employ over 500 employees locally, which is amazing. A lot of they're one of the few manufacturers that pour, meaning their dildos are made in-house. So they're not sent out or anything like that. Their first product is the Pocket Rocket. This was the very first product that they ever came out with. And over 40 years, it's still strong. And it's still, like it's been voted in Cosmopolitan and in Glamour magazine. So that's a little bit about them. And then also, as we're moving into the second generation, so Ron Braverman is the owner, and his son, it's a family-owned business, and his son is sort of taking over and moving them into the next level. I have a lot of their products behind me. We have the Tryst, we have iVibe, Good Head. So there's going to be a mixture of products in the basket. A lot of their top selling products and fun. So they're gonna make it really fun and exciting for the winner.
Ooh. Yeah. Changing the subject to something more serious now for Dr. Diana. This is from another couple who asks, what can a couple do if they are at an impasse with one another?
You know, I think it's, first of all, it's far harder and more painful for a couple to be sexless than it is to do the work. Doing the work has so many payoffs. And so you need to first start with, again, a heart-to-heart talk and suspending your differences. And talk about the troubles that you have. Acknowledge your partner's feelings and difficulties, and say that you're here, you're listening. You know, with attachment theory, we talk about being available and then responsive. We want that as a child. We also want that in our adult relationships too. We want somebody who is empathic and then helpful. And so if some women have gotten used to saying to their male partners, well, I just want you to listen and don't try to fix it. Because men typically have a little more of the fix it mentality. And sometimes they're not really listening. They're thinking about how they can fix it. So, but if you say that, you might deprive your partner of half the ways that they could show love. So you want to then be empathic really listen, and then helpful. How can we figure this out together? We're a team. And so sometimes just the baby steps are the first steps. Just holding each other. I have this in the book, several exercises that help couples, like the 7-second kiss and the 15-second hug. It's long enough to get oxytocin going. And for couples that have little children, I've suggested they do this. And sometimes the children will witness it, and then they want to get in on it. And so you have like a group hug. And of course, children seeing the parents being affectionate is such good sex education. But the impasse, you got to take the baby steps and talk to each other. And maybe you expand on the life you have together by building and broadening and lengthening and strengthening. Talking about savoring the good things you have. And then finding new things to do together and new things to do apart. You know, you're not joined at the hip. So you have to have sometimes apart. And especially if the person is an introvert, they really need time alone. And you can ask for that time alone and say, will you watch the kids for an hour? I just really need to have some time alone and to process stuff. So to be respectful of your partner. There are lots of ways to overcome impasses, but those are some of the ways.
Love it. Viloshni, here's another serious question from a viewer. What advice do you have for someone in a toxic relationship?
So I think firstly, with toxic relationships, you would need to assess the red flags and how serious, at what level it is. And depending on where you're at in that process, you would need to then rather consult a professional if there is an opportunity to. If not, you need to get out. You need to get out for your safety, and if you have kids, for their safety. It's not an easy process, so you would need to also just ensure that you reach out to someone that you can trust, someone who can guide you and support you through the process, because often people in toxic relationships, for some reason or the other, they kind of get stuck and they get stuck in that cycle, and it's just very difficult. As easy as it sounds for the person to get out, it's not as easy for them, and they definitely going to need someone to hold their hand along the way. And I know in different countries they have different support systems, so perhaps what they could also do is reach out and get the relevant help, from one of the organizations.
Right. With toxic relationships, I think at some point it becomes a pattern and the cycle is repeated, and then subconsciously it becomes familiar. And at that point, it really requires a level of discomfort to break free from that toxicity, which seems like the wrong choice in your mind because you fear all that. The fear of the unfamiliar overrides your desire to break the cycle. And then people stay because it's comfortable, but it's just familiar and it's stopping you from a happier life. It's better to walk away, break that pattern, say no, get out, because we all deserve love. And if we stay in that toxicity, it'll build up and make us sick. Ava, one of your courses is a 7-hour course on healing from loss and abuse. How can your course help someone in a toxic relationship?
Well, yes, excuse me, due to COVID, there are many people who are stuck in unhealthy relationships. And that's one of the reasons I'm giving away the book and the course, the full course, because I want to help people who are suffering in any way that I can. But as Viloshni said, this is not a replacement for a mental health specialist or even talking to somebody you can trust. However, I did come up with over 100 loving solutions that can help people. And some of the exercises are meditations, like the loving kindness meditation, and the reparenting yourself is a meditation, and also manifesting a better life for yourself. There's also exercises on positive self-talk, trying to replace the punishment and the negative self-talk. And there's art therapy, there's journaling, there's all kinds of spiritual sort of chakra balancing. So there's something for everyone. That's why it's 7 hours long. And it's a great resource if you want to be a coach and help others to heal as well. So that was really my catalyst, was COVID, to get this out as soon as I could, because there's just a lot of suffering, more than ever before, of all kinds of abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical, and so forth. So we need to help those people.
We thank you for that. Tamara, this question is specifically for you from a participant. Have you mentored any students who want to become a love coach so they can heal their own relationship?
Several. So a lot of students come in because they just want to learn about relationship and sex, but there are some that come in and say that they want to learn how to help their relationships. And I do have some students who had they wanted to come in and just become a coach so they can help others, but this program actually helped them. And so they would come back and tell me how they have healed from some of their issues. And so it helped them to just become a better person. So yeah, I'd probably say about 40% of the students who come through are coming in to heal themselves and then be able to heal someone else or help someone else. So I usually just tell them, take it all in, use what you need for yourself, and can then be able to help someone else as well.
I feel like you really heal while you're helping other people.
You do, definitely.
And we often teach what we need to learn.
Yes.
So I think many therapists, coaches, counselors come from adversity, which makes them even better.
That's where that passion comes from. I know for me specifically, I definitely came from a broken home and I had a lot of struggles in relationships. And that's why I really wanted to dig into and just immerse myself with learning everything about love and relationships and trauma and how it's affected me. And then in that whole process, and I helped myself and others. And it's like really a win-win situation.
Yeah, that's the same thing for me when I got into this program. You know, I the same as you, Erika, came from a broken home, but also I had been married for 34 years. And so part of that, you know, we as wives, we think that, you know, everything is good. What I realized is that we tend to follow just a pattern that is the same thing over and over again. So I had to learn, which I did, how to break that up and to make the relationship so much better. And I learned a lot of the techniques when I got into this program for sure. And, you know, it was really good, but I hear that from students all the time.
Dr. Hernando, this question is for you. What other relationship challenges has COVID highlighted for people during the pandemic, and what advice do you have for them?
Thank you, Erika. There are a lot of challenges that I think people are facing, and I briefly mentioned a few of them before around economic, around relational, around income and employment. But in addition to that, I think we have to look at some of the challenges around stress, anxiety, depression, and mental health. So I really want to make sure that people are aware that rates are surging and substance use is surging. And because of the lack of coping mechanisms and sort of the cutoff of a lot of our self-care opportunities, so do we find that people are in need of maybe revamping what they lean upon to help cope with some of these difficulties. And, you know, we're in a very high stress moment. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of sadness and loneliness. So it's, I think, been very beneficial for us to take a step back and look at how these are impacting us in a very honest and vulnerable and transparent way. I think it's really valuable for people to start leaning into their own self-care. And I often talk to people about identifying different versions of self-care. And many people have sort of one or two go-tos with self-care. but they don't necessarily have a broad range of tools in the tool chest that they can turn to. For example, many of my clients, especially my male clients, used physical exercise and working out at the gym as one of the ways that they blew off steam, and also worked on their coping through getting out some of that aggression, and also with exercise. What happens when that's lost, when that's removed? They oftentimes have all their eggs in one basket when it comes to their self-care. So I often encourage people to explore the different types. And I usually teach people around 6 different types of self-care, to look at their physical self-care, which is one, your diet, your sleep, your nutrition, the exercise regimens, and trying to revamp their physical self-care. Their emotional self-care. And Dr. Ava mentioned this in her course on healing, which is our journaling, our therapeutic work, our processing that we're doing, the self-help books, like Dr. Diana's book as well. These are all ways that we are working towards emotional self-care to help us with the pandemic. There's the spiritual self-care as well. How we utilize things like prayer or energy, or lining up with different sort of spiritualities that help us with faith and with keeping empowerment and hope alive, and motivation sort of fervent. The social self-care. Even though many opportunities have been removed, it's important for us to still find unique, creative, imaginative ways to have social self-care, whether that's phone calls, Zoom calls, social distance hangouts. And then we have to look at our practical self-care, which is doing the things that are like the duties and responsibilities that are day to day to help relieve some stress and anxiety. And that could be anything from cleaning up the house, doing the dishes, cleaning out the inbox, answering some emails, taking care of some errands. These things can really weigh on our shoulders, and they can also impact our mental health, which is the last form of self-care that I encourage people to look at. What kind of self-care works to help alleviate and the specific mental health difficulties you're having, such as anxiety? And maybe with specific anxiety, you respond well to meditation. So how often do we do breath work and breathing exercises? How often are we forgetting to incorporate that in our morning ritual and routines, our evening ritual and routines? And then what other ways do we sort of combat depression or anxiety or some of the other struggles that are impacting our self-care and our mental health? And I think when people look at all those, hopefully that can help with alleviating some of those challenges. And in addition to strategies as well, like some strategies we have to also look at, which is time management. We have to look at living under the same roof. How do we create boundaries around children? Because now we have kids who are living at home, who are being schooled at home, who are also parents are working at home. So there's just a lot of management that we have to do from a strategy perspective. And one thing I've found from people is you can work with your partner to rotate that. Like if you have a dual parent home, it's okay to ask each other to maybe take the kids out for a walk for an hour and a half to give the other space to just recharge. Because right now, rest, relaxation, and recharge are vital, I think, to individuals and people. And we can work together to try to create that opportunity for each other in our relationships. And I have actually one couple who did something really unique, which I'm really proud of. They sort of socialized and their children to a couple times per week to watch a movie together. And they had some rules and boundaries about watching the movie and not going in the kitchen and doing the things. And what they did was they told the kids, mommy and daddy are taking a nap now. We're going to go upstairs and take a nap, and we're not to be bothered unless there's an emergency. You can always knock. And so the kids got socialized to watch this 2-hour movie while the parents were upstairs. And that was the opportunity for them to create emotional time, to create sexual time. And it worked really well. But it was sort of a training, and they had to sort of get in that groove. But it was really valuable and wonderful for their self-care and also for their sex and intimacy life.
Yeah, and they could get to watch a movie. I think what you said,
Dr. Hernando, I think that's why cartoons were invented, so that parents sex.
The best reason for cartoons, exactly.
what you're saying is so important, because so many people have destructive coping mechanisms, and then they go to heal and then they just make the situation worse. So that's extremely important. I can't believe how time has flied, because we're almost ready to wrap up our Sexpert panel. But first, let's find out who the lucky winner is of the Duck Johnson sex toy basket, shall we? Dr. Ava, would you like to randomly choose a winner?
Oh, I will. Yes. And the winner is Tiffany Wharton. So congratulations, Tiffany. I know you are going to enjoy your gift basket from Doc Johnson. Whether you're alone or in a relationship, I know you're going to have the best Valentine's Day. And by the way, we are going to be having, Sexpert panels monthly, and you're going to get gifts, and we're going to be sponsored by companies that have pleasure products. And the next Sexpert panel is going to be on open relationships. And our special guest is actually going to be Carol and David of the Sexy Lifestyles radio show, which is on Voice America.
I love it. Free sex and dating advice and gifts. Come on, guys. That concludes our Sexpert panel with a final request for Dr. Diana. Tell us about your podcast, Love, Lust, and Laughter.
Love, Lust, and Laughter is on Progressive Radio Network. It's actually a radio show because the first hour is live, and then it's archived and it becomes a podcast. It's 10 years old. I started in 2010, and I have a lot of authors on. I've had Dr. Ava on many times. Haven't had Dr. Hernando, but I'm about to. And this is such a great way to get out good, solid information. Isn't it, Ava? I mean, good, solid information. And radio
Erika has a podcast, and Tamara's going to be doing a podcast with Viloshni. And I've done radio shows with Hernando.
Yes.
It's the best way to get exposure.
Yes, it is.
What kind of exposure?
We need to get good information, good, solid information from people who know what they're talking about and who have empathy and want to help you. So that's Love, Lust, and Laughter. Well, I just wanted to say, though, my advice website is deardrdiana.com. Deardrdiana.com. And that has, you can get my book there. You can go to the YouTube videos that I've done with lots of sex tips and so on. Many things at deardrdiana.com. Thank you for this opportunity, really, to have this panel. I think is so good, and everyone on the panel has contributed. It's something different, and it's wonderful. I'm very pleased to have been included. Thank you, Dr. Ava.
You're welcome.
Well, I would like to have all of you on my podcast, Playmate Pickup, and that was fun. So I'd like to mention that to the guys looking for love or just more sex, my 6-week course, The Art of Pickup, is available with personalized guidance at playmatepickup.com. Thank you, Sexperts, Dr. Ava, Hernando, Tamara, Viloshni, and Dr. Diana for sharing your wisdom on COVID, love, relationships, and sex. I hope everyone watching found it enlightening. I know I did. Stay healthy, safe, happy. I'm Erika Jordan, your moderator, until we meet again.